Okay, so let's talk about fake news. This is fun. This has been on my mind pretty much all week. Spent probably 20, 30 hours just thinking, pondering, doing research on this, trying to figure out how do we deal with it? How do we start? And going over your comment, it just hit me so hard that this is probably the biggest problem. It's probably, if you can't solve this, how do you solve anything? If you can't bring the world together on this, how do we solve any global problem? If we can't, cut through the BS, cut through the crap and all the fake, lies out there. And if we can find a way to do it, then I'm super optimistic that we can use those techniques with everything, and we can find ways to work together, find ways to at least get truth. So what do you think off the top of your head, reading that article?
The article is nice. I think it's better than I thought it will be, because I know, as expert in the field, kind of nobody has solved it, and the clear-cut solution is not necessarily on the horizon, because the whole approach to solving it so far has essentially hit a dead end. Like a wall, just splattered. All right. So in more specific detail, the general approach outlined in the article, of course, is I guess the best anyone can do right now. The problem is it's not enough, and the reason why it's not enough is that you won't be able to do it enough, because it still hinges on, the key question is, how do you, if you have so much content, how do you manage it in real time and make sure that at least there are cautionary sort of information next to BS, fake news information? And the thing is, ultimately it still boils down, and it's boiling down to the same thing in the article, to human reviewers, because the AI can help you sort of organize stuff, bring it to your attention, identify something new here, but the person has to look at it and make a judgment about it, even if it was then put into a general database. And from that point on, even AI could understand what it is. But even that still has limits, because there has been attempts at censorship online, and in China they have been even somewhat successful. The problem is that even in China, people always find a way how to circumvent it if they want to, because programs, it's like when you have a computer game and there's a boss in the computer game, there's a reason why people are able to beat computer bosses after some time of figuring out their pattern, because that's what it is. It will have a pattern, and once you figure out what the thing is scanning for, then you can think about, okay, what can I do differently that people will still understand but the program won't. And so they were doing things okay, if they're going through text, then you switch to images, because it can't read the image. And in the images, when they employ a whole bunch of people to look at those images, which is currently what you do to filter out sexually explicit content or violent content, there are people, usually in third world countries who really need the money, who have the thankless job of looking at terrible things all day and just flagging them. So
that's to think about, yeah. I wonder how
so
many
so
people.
you can throw a lot of people on the problem, still won't be enough. But in China, I guess they did that. But then you can also think of, okay, the people who are doing the censorship still have some rules or guidelines, something that they are working off of. So in the images, you can try to essentially use code, not computer code, but cipher code, that the image is a symbolic representation of something else. So it looks innocent if the person is not already in on it and doesn't understand what the symbolism is of the thing. So they switch it up to images, first images of the thing that they wanted to talk about. When that becomes banned, they switch it to symbolic references to the thing that they wanted to be talking about in image form, and then they can try to do all kinds of other things. Essentially, as a China, what you have to do is essentially really clamp it down, the whole thing, but then you're starting to lose the benefits of internet as well. You maybe still have okay, people can access some sort of censored database of information, and they technically can make calls or play games, but there really isn't the whole positive thing about the internet. That's the free thought element of it, the creativity, originality, what's stimulating progress, part of it. And I think even in China, the only reason that it still works to some extent is that there is the whole rest of the world who's doing the innovation and figuring out. China is pretty much set up to be I guess manufacturing economy based on stealing patents. But if nobody else had a free world that's inventing all of the things, they wouldn't have as much that they could just copy and do in their fully doing stuff focused economy. So I think, of course, they're trying to invest into sciences and stuff, but that's a different thing. Like the old model that worked before was the old academia tied to old newspapers and television, centralized media. Was sort of working together. It was one thing really, and that was that like the scientific community is figuring out the problem, like a few small amount of expert people, usually on behest of the government or whoever is giving them money. So it selects the problems that they will try to solve. It narrows down the methods by which they can try to solve them. And then when they figure something out, then the old model worked in a way that, like in China, they try to still make it work that way. That just like some authority on news would just tell people, this is what we figure out, this is how it is, this is what we're going to do. And people still have enough trust in that system that they will do it without questioning it too much. The problem is that in the Western world, like that's passé. Like this whole old model is just, we're not going to return to that model, because the key issue that started the whole thing is that the old model abused the monopoly on truth and power that they had, and they lied about a whole bunch of things and manipulated people into wars. And then they became like surprised that once internet was here and people could like fact check the central media, that they found out that they are lying and are, bad people trying to make people do bad things. So now they've lost the trust, and you can't just get it back. That's not how that works. So the truthful, honest core to what started the whole fake news thing, the sort of good thing at the beginning actually, was the reckoning of the old system, because the internet opened the door to truth, essentially. Like you could actually, like before you literally couldn't find out certain things. Now you can find out. So the problem is, like, there's still bad people in the world who try to do bad things, and they adapt it. And the way they adapt it on the internet is that, okay, we can't restrict information without losing the internet and everything good that it can do for us, including good in a sense of like the ability to track what everybody's doing all the time everywhere, which is also valuable even to like intelligence agencies and governments. So they don't want to lose that really element of it at all. Like people, they want everybody to be using a network computer or devices so that they can know what everybody's doing. So they don't want to lose that, but they still try to control that. So at the beginning, they like first try to like assert some sort of control, and actually the control approach, the full extent to which it can work on the internet are the social media, meaning that you try to re-centralize it somewhat. Right. But then that of course introduced a whole host of another negative problem and exacerbated some of the negative aspects of the internet without improving and with sacrificing some of the better aspects of the internet.
Right.
So again, the other approach was to flood the internet with misinformation. So you can't delete the truth, so you add all kinds of untruths also, and make them look exactly like the truth, so that people can't effectively pick the
that's
truth.
exactly the best argument, because if you flood it with truth, then the whole thing kind of becomes questionable, right? And you can't, so it's like you said, you can't take away the truth, but if you flood it enough, you can't see the truth anymore, and then everybody loses faith in it.
Yeah, and so also it makes, because as long as the only thing there essentially was truth, then everybody who just believes media found the truth there and formed a correct opinion, even if the correct opinion was to doubt the government. Now people can't easily determine which part of the internet is the truthful part of the internet, so they will still form an opinion. It's just now because there's a large percentage of nonsense there, they will form a large percentage of people who form nonsense beliefs. So it's that thing. It's still all traceable back to essentially intelligence agencies and governments and people who just try to control the whole thing. Like, who do you think would be the first to flood the internet with misinformation? Intelligence agencies on behest of governments to cover up some sort of bullshit that they did.
Makes sense. Yeah, makes sense. Okay.
So just to finish this point, like that's why you can't trust government to just censor the way out of it.
I hear you. Oh man, I'm depressed now.